Welcome to our first ever episode of Beyond the Bench. And so for our first guest, we're going to have the one and only, the president and CEO of Mountain State Legal Foundation, Cristen. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Entirely my pleasure, Noah. Thanks.
Yes. So go ahead and kind of introduce yourself to someone who may not know you.
Sure. So as any proud Texan does, I start with the fact that I grew up in Texas, just south of Fort Worth, small town. I'm a small town girl. I grew up in a home that was very traditional, but I also had a huge political influence in that. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, but she was very active in our local politics, which is a great place to be. Local politics are so important to the way that our country functions. So I have many fond memories of dinner time conversations about what's going on in the world around us. And so I come by my current job honestly. I love the work that we get to do to really bring our country back to founding principles. And that was so much of my education as well as my childhood experience. I went to Texas A&M for my undergrad in political science and then worked in a number of locations. In my first life, I was actually a teacher. I loved the opportunity to get into the classroom and teach high school seniors about U.S. government. For one terrible semester, they had me teach economics. It was a terrible choice on their part. It was horrible for me. It was horrible for the kids. But we all survived it. And I got to get back to my passion, which is U.S. government. So I loved doing that, and we bring a lot of that same love for teaching here in the foundation. We have a vibrant fellowship program because I love inspiring the next generation, and we have a whole team of people here who feels exactly the same way. We love getting the next generation excited about the work that we do here. And I like to think that a little bit of my teaching teaching spirit is getting to be at play there. But after I worked in the Texas Capitol for a number of years in policy, specifically in the natural resources area, which I fell in love with, I went back to law school, and that ultimately led me here to Mountain States. So I get to do everything that I love. I get to teach. I get to have that wonderful focus on our constitutional underpinnings. I get to work in the natural resources and all the other cool things that we do here. But I also get to be a lawyer in pursuit of all of those things as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know coming from a small town, trying to change policy, it kind of seems like this big dog versus little dog fight. And, you've kind of seen both sides of the spectrum now. And especially now coming out to Mountain State where you've made big policy changes and big case decisions, that's insane. I have to give you all to it. And for those who don't know me, I am a little bit newer to Mountain States, but Cristen has very much been the energy at the forefront spearheading this mission, and it's awesome to have some time to sit down with you and kind of get to know why and how you even do all this after going through all this experience and still having this excitement and energy towards all of this, because it's a lot. Law is a lot to understand and truly make a change. So it's awesome to see that you're still doing what you're doing with so much passion. So for those who don't know, just to add on, how would you explain Mountain State Legal Foundation to someone who's never heard of us?
Sure. So our mission is enormous because we were founded to be a conservative voice in the courtrooms to fight back against entities that would pull our country away from its constitutional underpinnings. And that's a huge, huge job. Fortunately for us and our team, our board has cabined that into some manageable bites for us, although each of those manageable bites are pretty enormous in and of themselves. So we started in 1977 working specifically on natural resources issues. That is our bread and butter. That is the keystone issue that Mountain States was founded to defend. And what that looks like out here in the West is drastically different than what that may look like east of the Mississippi. Once you get back east, you're not dealing with the massive swaths of federal lands that we deal with out here in the West. So when the government is your neighbor and the government starts to get too big for its britches, that's where we come in. But we do the same thing in equal protection issues. We do the same thing in our Second Amendment practice. And most recently, we've added free speech and freedom of association to that mix. And so the work that we do is to hold government inside its constitutional limitations. We're fortunate at this precise moment in history to have a Supreme Court that vividly agrees with us. And we are excited about the opportunity to create some fantastic precedent that will have the durability to last for a few generations that do that work of bringing the government back into its constitutional limitations. That concept of separation of powers is one that is a huge impact and a huge focus in the work that we do. But again, fortunately, this Supreme Court seems to have taken that specific principle to heart too. And it's giving us a lot of opportunities in the here and now to really change the landscape.
That's awesome. And I believe that, Mountain State does have this definition of standing behind liberty, liberty for the people, and making sure that government doesn't, I guess, lack a better term, overstep its limits of liberty.
Exactly. We've been fighting to help, if you will, the government stay in its own lane for almost 50 years at this point. And like I said, I'm really excited to have a Supreme Court that feels the same way at the moment. Our mission, several years ago, somebody, as we were working on some marketing materials here, was trying to help us put our mission statement into a much faster, much easier way for people to understand what we do. And somebody said, well, what about a free country for free people? And we have latched onto that because that really is a quick and easy explanation for what we do here at Mountain States. We believe in liberty. We believe in a free country designed for free people.
And I truly do believe that you've been a strong energy behind that and helping us get to that next step and whatever that looks like. Sure. So I have an interesting question for you. So you've been on both sides. I've seen, in your experience, you've worked for the House Republican Caucus. You've worked under the Texas Governor, Rick Perry, some very big names, very big places. And now you're kind of like on the opposite side. You're almost like fighting these government entities on certain policies. So for you, what has kind of been like the biggest difference between being on the inside and now being on the outside?
So I consider my work in government to be kind of like a secret agent on the inside.
You're like a little double agent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
a lot of the work that I was allowed to do on behalf of the really amazing gentleman that I had the opportunity to work for, you named Governor Perry. Governor Perry had a vision that was very similar to the work that we do here at Mountain States. His focus was on freeing the people to go forth and do good and, prosper, capture the American dream, work hard, accomplish amazing things for your family, set your children up for success in their lives. He believed in all of that. And so while I was behind the lines, if you will, I was still definitely given the opportunity to fight for those issues. My boss in the Texas legislature, Representative Warren Chisholm, was an amazing believer in the free market as well and traditional values. And so it was the same fight, different forum. But one of the things that it taught me, not just the principles have remained the same, and I'm incredibly grateful for the principles that I was all allowed to learn, but it also brought a real appreciation for how important it is to build a coalition. In a legislative arena, if you don't have a coalition behind a piece of legislation, behind a bill, you're never going to get it passed. Mm-hmm. So you have to win friends and influence people in the most traditional sense of the phrase. So that is one of the things that I've brought to Mountain States. Lawyers have a tendency to be more lone wolf types rather than coalition builders, and that's just not the way that we play the game here at Mountain States. We're a small shop, and we have to work really hard because our traditional opponent is the largest law firm on the planet, the Department of Justice,
Yeah.
right? And so we have to be thoughtful and strategic and develop partnerships with other organizations like us, whether it's the think tanks that are doing the original research that empower us to recognize that there's a problem over here and maybe a lawsuit will be the solution, or perhaps it's partnering with one of our fellow law firms like Southeastern Legal or Pacific Legal or Institute for Justice or the Goldwater Institute, or Texas Public Policy Foundation, my friends from back home. There are just so many opportunities for us to do more with that if we have that belief in coalitions and what we can accomplish together. So.
Yeah, I always believe that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly.
You know, it's a team effort. And one of the craziest things that I've kind of picked up working within, I guess now, new legal work and law work is, you know, I come from a large background of media and marketing and journalism, but there's this crazy similarity between, I guess, lawyers and like journalists. You kind of have to be this, you know, fine, not puppeteer, but you have to work a narrative. You know, and you have to find an angle. You have to make sure that you're hearing not just one side, but both sides to make a good story. And a lot of that is staying sharp, staying on top of it, asking the right questions to the right people, making sure you're not just doing it alone. You know, you can ask around and ask for help. So I think that's the similarities have always kind of just been messing with me these first couple weeks, but I'm slowly coming around to it and I'm learning a little bit more. And, you know, my own dad was like, wow, you should. So what I'm hearing is you should go to law school. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do 3 more years of school. I heard it's not that easy.
It's not fun.
There's a lot of reading.
It can be. I actually really enjoyed my law school experience, but I have counseled so many kids that are considering law school that law is a lot like going into like the mission field or going into teaching. You really have to be called to make it worth it, because it is a lot of work. And if it is not the place that you're supposed to be, it's not the profession that is really going to move your soul, I'm not sure 3 years and several $100,000 is worth it.
It's all right. I'll make sure to tell my dad that then. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really on my agenda. I mean, it's cool, but I think a lot of people say that you have to be into philosophy. Do you think that's true when you're going to law school?
Philosophy. And this is actually one of my beefs with the law school experience writ large is they don't necessarily teach you how to be a practitioner of the law, you know, how to actually be in the courtroom lawyer. There are a handful of schools that are really starting to make a name for themselves in that regard. Back home in Texas, Baylor is doing a really good job of spending a lot of time teaching its students how to actually do the job of being a lawyer in the courtroom representing clients and that kind of thing. To the question that you're asking, I'm afraid that that's a lot of what it's become, is we're trying to be philosophers. And that's not really our job as lawyers in a lot of ways. Most lawyers are going to find themselves in a courtroom, and that judge doesn't care about your philosophical underpinnings most of the time. He cares about whether or not your client ran the red light, or whether your client followed the rule of law. That's theoretically his job. I think one of the things that we've seen happening in the courtrooms is not just lawyers, but judges yielding to that desire to be philosophical rather than to be practitioners.
Understood.
Yeah.
You know, you got to make it very clear and concise.
Right.
Yeah. Again, like that was one of the things that I was talking with the team about. You know, journalism, you got to make sure that you can have all these complex, you know, techniques and concepts, but at the end of the day, you got to make something that's understandable. I think working with communications, you know, you got to take this very legal thing and distill it down to something very understandable that, you know, the average person can just understand, and that's hard enough in itself. Because when I first came on, you know, we were throwing the words like amicus and subpoena and appellant and appella. I don't even know if those are the correct terms, but this is exactly what I'm aiming at. But you have to find a way to get a synonym and then thesaurus, and then make it even easier than that. So it's a crazy concept. But
you guys have a hard job being the communications team for a legal shop, because we lawyers forget how to speak to people not in a courtroom.
It's another language.
It really is. And so taking the work that we're doing, the briefs that we're filing, the concepts that we're arguing in the courtroom, and making it really genuinely accessible to people who are picking up our litigator at 6 o'clock at night while they're waiting on dinner or something. They don't really want to read a treatise in philosophy. They want to
can't say that I do.
Easily understand what's going on in this organization that they are supporting or thinking about supporting. So it's, you guys have a hard row to hoe.
So kind of transitioning back to, I guess, Mountain State as a whole, well, even just kind of digging in a little bit more, I'd say, you said you originally had this love for natural resources, even when you were coming up through school, even before joining Mountain States in 2017, yes. I believe. Yes.
Yeah, July 1st, 2017.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. So where did that come? Did that come from working within the government, or did that come even before? The love for natural resources. Yeah.
Governor Perry actually gave me the opportunity to get into natural resources and start knowing and loving them. And by the time that I was done, I really did. In Texas, most of the natural resources work that you're going to be doing, because there isn't much federal land, is going to be oil and gas. We have a little bit of mining, a lot of water issues, and some air quality issues. And so those were the issues that I was privileged to get to learn while working for him, and really fell in love with it, because they're complicated issues, but energy in particular is something that I just adore, because when you start looking at the impact of reliable, affordable energy in a country, it is one of the best indicators of whether that population has the opportunity to achieve prosperity. Obviously, a lot of other factors are going to go into it, but it is probably, and I'm going to be bold and say it is, the number one indicator of whether the country has set itself up to allow its people to achieve the American dream. If you look at any of the other countries, the minute that the energy becomes unreliable, or the minute that it becomes unaffordable, then you have changed the equation for their opportunities in drastic ways, which is one of the reasons, we're getting close to launching a heartstrings project of mine called the Center for American Prosperity and Energy. The reason that we named it, and what we're doing there, is we're pulling out a couple of attorneys and giving them the task of becoming specialists and really digging down into the issues that impact the natural resources industries, particularly timber, mining, and oil and gas, the extractive industries, if you will, to figure out what it is that we can do in the courtrooms to unleash the free market in significant ways in those industries, to allow them to succeed at their task of being profitable businesses, but at the same time, hopefully do the same thing for the rest of America, right? So if our energy industry, whether it is nuclear, mining that uranium, or coal, or it is pumping that oil and gas out of the fields, out of the basins in responsible ways, all of that, of course, requires the responsibility. Freedom requires responsibility. It's two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. So if we unleash those industries to do amazing work, that's doing the same thing for America, right? Mm-hmm. Because the minute that it costs less to ship your goods, the minute that it costs less to flip your light switches on, the minute that your overhead at your accounting firm decreases because electricity is dropping in price, you change the equation for the entirety of the country. And while we have so many, and Noah, you let me run down a rabbit trail, but man, I love this stuff.
This is passion. This is passion at work here. Keep listening if you're really into it.
The reason that I get so excited about it is because it does create that opportunity for prosperity throughout the rest of the country. The laws that we are fighting more often in the extractive industries are the environmental laws that were the statutes that were passed by Congress in the late 60s and early 70s. Things like the NEPA, FLPMA, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, all of those things. The problem with those isn't the statute itself. Most of those statutes are entirely reasonable in their statutory construction. Perhaps a little vague, but that's another beef that we can pick up at another time.
That's law to an extent, especially when you get in federal. You got to have a blanket, but there's a couple holes in the blanket.
But those laws, the statutes themselves, they're not terrible. They're not our problem. What the bureaucracy has done to those laws as they took the laws and built regulation around them is ultimately what we find ourselves fighting more often than not. So one of the goals of our Center for American Prosperity and Energy, CAPE, as we call it here in the shop, is to shed a lot of that regulation and bring the activity that government is intervening in back into its statutory limitations and cut a lot of the chaff that has built up around the laws and make the experience interacting with those laws so much more reasonable. And honestly, that's what we're doing with a lot of the practice areas that we're doing. It's not that Congress is writing evil law. Again, many of them are very vague, and that creates opportunities for inappropriate bureaucratic intervention. But
tend to capitalize a little bit on the holes.
Indeed, but the problem is oftentimes with what the bureaucracy does with reasonable, well-intentioned law. So whether it's in the environmental space, whether it's in the equal protection space, whether it's in the free speech space, that's Second Amendment space. We do that in all of our practice areas to a great degree. But that Governor Perry's the one that gave me the opportunity to get super excited about natural resources.
That's awesome. I mean, it's truly something that you can feel the passion coming from you. Every time we have a case, every time that something comes up that we have a problem and you want to solve it. And our remedy, that's the political or the legal term that I'm starting to learn, the law. But I know that a lot of this has also been kind of transforming into what you're talking about was CAPE and revamping or revitalizing these other areas. So how specifically is Mountain States doing that within these? So I'm reading here that you have you've been overseeing the hiring of new legal staff. I know a lot of people are a little bit younger, but still got a lot of great experience here at MSLF. But you're also launching, it looks like, litigation centers, expanding fellowship programs for law students. So what's the idea and I guess the philosophy behind that?
So our shop is our legal shop. Well, our entire shop. I am blessed at the people that we've been able to surround ourselves with because this place is very missional. Everybody here is genuinely excited about making the world a better place for the people around us, and we find the best way, the best use of our talents to accomplish that is through the courts, through the media. Through our relationships with the people who support the work that we do, and through the donors that are cheered to get to be a part of the good work that we're doing. And so that the philosophy that underpins this place really is finding people who believe passionately in the mission that we are capitalizing upon here and making sure that we're all pressing towards that goal in as creative and entrepreneurial, cost-effective way that we can. One of our young attorneys is fond of saying that Mountain States really is a choose-your-own-adventure book. As long as you have the work ethic to accomplish it, and you're staying inside the mission. If you can do those things, it is, go for it. If you have a great idea for how to make the world a better place, how can we support you? As long as it's within the mission and you have the work ethic to make that happen. And that's really the philosophy that we have around here is is how can you make the world a better place?
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it easy. But you touched also on fellowships, and that's the second part of what we work on. It is a challenge to take students out of law school and drop them into the work around here, because they, as I was saying earlier, very few of us left law school with a genuine, real understanding of how to be lawyers, right?
You got to have some hands-on experience.
Exactly.
You got to get down and dirty,
Exactly. And that's very much what we focus on here, is raising up that next generation of people who will join us in being missional and accomplish the very challenging task of holding government inside its lane, inside its constitutional limitations. So we take that part of our work just as seriously. And again, it gives me an outlet so that I get to be, and so many of our attorneys get to be, the teachers that we want to be, to inspire the next generation to join the cause and do this good work. So
yeah, we've had some awesome fellows, some awesome interns coming through here, and even still working here and putting in great work for us behind the scenes. So shout out to all the awesome fellows.
And almost every single one of them leave here saying, okay, when I was talking to my classmates, they spent the semester, they spent the summer researching specific questions or filing, and I was doing those things, but I was also writing briefs. I was interviewing clients with our attorneys. I was, going to the court hearings. I was doing all of these things so they get the opportunity to really get that practitioner experience here at the foundation. And I enjoy their eyes lighting up at the experience, but I'll be honest, I selfishly get even more excited when they come back and they're like, okay, so experience comparison, this place is awesome. And I agree. Yeah,
I can totally back that one as well. And I think that in the sense of like our mission and values, it's very straightforward. It's always, we're the constitutional lawyers, whatever that looks like. And a lot of people, not even a lot of people, but there is just a general kind of preface where some people try to put us, what is it, right-leaning or off-center. What's kind of your take on that, as well as like for Mountain States, for, how do you back that we are centered?
So at our core, our job is to be principled, and that's a full stop. That is the end of that sentence. Our job is to be principled, and the principle that drives our activity is the Constitution. So if it's inside the Constitution, government gets to do it. If it's outside the Constitution, government doesn't get to do it. That tends to land us on the right of center policy perspective more often than not, but not necessarily. And at its core, our job is to be principled above all else. So that's what guides the cases that we take. That's what guides the arguments that we make, whether it's in front of a court or in a brief. Our job is to be principled and not just in the. I'm going to use another word. Not just principled, but ethical in the application of those principles. To give an honest reading to the language of the Constitution, to give an honest reading to the statutes that we are looking at, or the regulations that the bureaucracy has given us, or more specifically our clients to work with. And if the government is, I like to say, if the government's getting grabby, then that's where we start participating and making sure that our clients, who we represent at no cost to them, they don't pay for our attorneys. That's where we start getting engaged to make sure that our clients' rights and the government's activity are not in conflict.
No selfish people over here.
No. Nope.
We could always put it like that, I guess going back to even when you first got here, if you don't mind me asking, we've always had the same mission and values, but how do you think the approach has changed, even going from when you started in 2017 to, I guess, now being 2025, almost 2026? And where do you kind of see Mountain State going?
Sure. The activity that we were doing when I started was very missional. It was very much on topic. It was doing the good work that Mountain States has become recognized and known for. What my board required of me, the task that they gave me, was to crank it up, and not just one notch. They wanted me to crank it up 50 notches. They wanted us to be more mission focused. They wanted us to be more ambitious. They wanted us to be more impactful. They wanted us to be more strategic in the cases that we were taking on, and that really does encapsulate what I expect of this team. Is every other year we put together a strategic plan that is going to guide our activities for the next 2 years, because courts move slow, so doing it more often than that is kind of a waste of paper.
Yeah.
But in that vein, what our teams do is they, within the vision and the mission that we have, that the board has set before us, and that I have, I'm gilding a lily that they've already put together in beautiful fashion. The team's job is to say, okay, within the next 2 years, this is the Goliath that I'm going to take out, and these are the 5 steps that I'm going to take, or the 15 steps, or whatever it is that I'm going to take to accomplish taking out this Goliath that is hindering freedom, that is hindering the free country, free people concept, that is limiting the free markets, that is limiting our access to our rights. The 10th Circuit just issued a fantastic decision in one of our Second Amendment cases, and Judge Timkovich in that decision said very candidly and very beautifully, and I'm totally going to botch this, Noah, because he did such a beautiful job, and so his words were eloquent where mine will lack in that eloquence, but what he said was, the Constitution doesn't allow for rights to be delayed. The government doesn't get to put your rights in a holding pattern and hope that on further reflection you will use your rights more wisely, more thoughtfully. Your rights are your rights, period, end of sentence. There's an accountability, as we were talking about earlier. There's an accountability measure that comes with those rights, but your rights aren't hindered. The government doesn't get to hinder your rights or delay your access to your rights, because they hope that you will give it some more thought and be more wise practitioner, be more wise user of your rights. Your rights are your rights, period, end of sentence. Again, full stop. And that's what we find ourselves arguing with the government about a lot. Your right to use your property should not be delayed for years and years and years and years as you go through environmental studies and historical studies and blah, blah, blah studies that keep you from actually making good use of your land. You have a responsibility to responsibly use it and not harm others in your use of it. But there's a difference in you suffering. One of our families that we represented in a small oil and gas company down in Louisiana, they worked for 40 years to actually put a drill bit in the ground and start producing oil on a lease that they had paid for 40 years from the federal government. And all through that time, they were going through study after study, and they would successfully complete the study. There was at no point did anybody say, this study is wrong, or this study indicates that what you are going to be doing is going to be harmful to anyone. They successfully completed and got a rubber stamp, got a green check mark on every single one of their studies.
There we go.
For 40 years. And every time that they would finish one, the government would say, okay, there's one more that we want you to do. And they would finish that one. Okay, there's one more that we want you to do. And then
bunch of hoops, basically.
And then environmental groups started coming in and saying, okay, they may have passed your standards for what this study was going to tell us, but they didn't pass our standards. So the study needs to be more stringent. It needs to cover more. And that is your right to use your land should not be delayed in that way any more than your right to bring home the firearm that you have purchased at the local gun store, and you've passed all the background checks, state, federal, local, whatever. You've proven that you are not on the bad kids list, and yet you have to wait for, here in Colorado, you have to wait for 3 days after you've paid for it to bring it home. In New Mexico, you have to wait 7 days before you can bring it home. That's untenable. And those are not the only 2 states, but that's the government getting grabby. That's the government intervening in a right that you have the right to exercise and also be held accountable for.
So rights are non-negotiable.
As it turns out.
But according to the government, they might be negotiable. Just a little bit.
Not so much.
Yeah, not so much. Not so much. Well, we appreciate your time, but I do have one final thing, I guess, for you to touch on. What would you say to anybody who has supported Mountain State up to this point, or even looking to support Mountain State, whether it's the foundation, whether it's the mission, or in any way?
Absolutely. The foundation currently stands at this wonderfully fantastic precipice of, we have set ourselves up for success over and over and over again, and we are starting to make waves like we could only dream about a few years ago in wonderful ways that set freedom loose in this country. And we are so proud of the work that we are doing. And there is so much more to come, because while we are so excited about the work that this administration is doing on our issues, they are unfortunately short-lived, because much of the work that they've done is through executive order. The work that we do here at the foundation has a longevity, has a durability that will outlast this president, that will outlast the particular congressman that you're pinning your hopes on, and really do remarkable work to set this country free to be the prosperous country that we were designed to be the free country that we were designed to be. The American dream is about so much more than just the money in your pocket, although that's a big part of it.
Very true.
Your freedom to live the life that you choose, to surround yourself with the people that inspire your soul. That all of those freedoms are baked into our Constitution. The government's job is to be small and to keep us safe from just the limited things that they were given authority over. That's their job, not to get involved in everything under the sun, which is what they have found themselves doing. And I'm going to misremember this, I'm sure. Was it Patrick Henry? One of our founding fathers said the tree of liberty must be fed, must be watered by the blood of patriots. At that time in history, that actually meant blood. At this point in history, that's not what it means, but it does, I think, speak to the fact that the fight for liberty really is never over, and that the minute that you rest, the minute that you relax, you start seeing that government encroachment again. I'm grateful that it does not require actual blood at this point. It does not require warring in the streets anymore.
We're a little more civil now.
So that is an amazing blessing. And we have generation after generation after generation of Americans who've been brought up to believe that and live out the idea that civil discourse is the way that we now water that tree of liberty. One of my biggest concerns for America is that we have forgotten how to engage in civil discourse. The minute that civil discourse breaks down, you find yourself looking at something far more untenable. You know, I don't think anybody in this country, myself and this foundation included, wants to see anything anywhere close to a civil war. But that civil discourse is it's the pressure outlet that allows us to have those disagreements, and things like the fact that we have regular elections. You know, come hell or high water, we have an election. Take it however you want to about the ways that we amended it during COVID, but even a national pandemic didn't shut down our regular elections. We're paying the price for some of the choices that we made on how we were going to handle that, But the fact that we have that eternal hope that maybe my team didn't win this time around, but in 2 years or in 4 years, we're going to find we're going to fight harder, and we're going to get our team in those legislative halls. That really does create the opportunity for us to continue fighting the good fight while not finding ourselves in true Civil War territory. And that Mountain States fights pretty hard for that too, specifically in our free speech world. The minute that people stop thinking that they don't have the freedom of speech is when things start turning to violence, and that should not be the answer. We know better. We know how to do this right. We've done it for almost 250 years. We've done it right for almost 250 years. So maybe that freedom of speech thing is a really important right, not just as a pressure release valve, but as a way for us to find the right answer, because no matter what you're talking about, 9 times out of 10, the answer is found somewhere closer to the middle than people want to admit. So compromise is a good thing for us.
I agree. I think a lot of people want to be heard equally and represented equally, but unfortunately, some entities may not make that possible or as easy as you may think or as can be said. Not unfortunately, but fortunately, Mountain States will always be here to represent that mission and make sure we can at least get the best of the best and try to make sure everybody's heard equally and represented equally. And we'll always be around to make that possible. However, Beyond the Bench is not going to be going on forever, but that does conclude everything that we've had for you. So we appreciate your time and your well thought out and beautiful answers and your, I guess, education towards even myself. I appreciate that so much, 'cause getting to know you a lot better. So I appreciate that. But this is not the final episode of Beyond the Bench. This is only the inaugural. So thank you, and we shall hear from you, I guess, the next time.
Very good. Thanks so much, Noah.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Yeah. Got to work on that wrap up a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you hit cut on the board too?
You want me to stop?
Yeah.